Hello, everybody, and welcome to what is hopefully, this microphone is really in my way, to what is hopefully the first of many videos about CakeyVerse stuff. Moving along with it, getting stuff done. The website is back up, relaunching it. I keep on looking over there because that's what OBS preview is, but I need to look into here because that's the camera. And I thought I've put a map up recently. It's a region map. It's a very empty map. There's like no features on it at all. It's literally just it's the land masses and then divided into regions into various kingdoms, or I don't want to call them kingdoms because I think that's going to get confusing. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video, is to explain this map, explain why it is so empty, but also why I've made it, why it exists, and what's going to come next in terms of the map, and how we go forward. There's a lot to it. I need to also, I'm at the same time developing a timeline. So I'm trying to do stories in the CakeyVerse. I'm trying to develop a game in the CakeyVerse, and I'm kind of trying to make sure that these have minimal kind of overlap, I guess, if that makes sense. So let's get rid of the camera. Let's switch to the map. So this is the very basic map. Behind my face at the moment is the Forbidden Islands, but we'll get to that in a minute. So this is kind of the map. I will admit, down here, sorry, I didn't click all the buttons. Down here, the spaceship. This is clearly just a stolen asset right now. We're not going to start the spaceship. I just wanted to point that out. And then the Forbidden Islands are here. Unfortunately, because of the way I've got this set up, the Forbidden Islands are right at the edge. In fact, I'm just going to get rid of the camera. There we go. That's probably easier, right? And then we got the Cake Republic and all this kind of things up there. So this is a very, very, very basic map. And it is just to show lore-wise, so in universe-wise, this video is presented very much out of universe. But in universe-wise, this map is created by the good people of the Cake Republic. I pressed too many buttons, I believe. Gotta get used to that. And this is how they see the landmass. So there have been a few maps that I put up before. This is 40 years after the event. So the event is when the CakeyVerse was first came into existence. So the event happened, CakeyVerse came into existence. Did not look like this, and going forward may not look like this. So one of the tenets of the CakeyVerse is that essentially they are scrambling around trying to save what was in the universe beforehand, but they're putting it in this kind of life draft situation. And I'll try to remember to switch back. So yeah, the whole point of the CakeyVerse is that the universe has kind of ended, and they're trying to save as much of the universe as they possibly can in this kind of life draft situation. So imagine, if you will, that this is imagine our solar system, so Earth, Mars, all the rest of them. Imagine if you could only take little bits of each one and then you shove them all together on one big landmass. That's what the CakeyVerse is, but over a much wider universal scope. A universal scope I haven't decided if Earth exists in yet. It probably will. I don't know at what time Earth would be set, but time is probably another video in and of itself, so let's not muddy the waters too much here. Let's go back to the map. So the good people of the Cake Republic put together this map around 40 years after the CakeyVerse started to exist. So 40 years after the first parts of the universe were forced together on this map. The Cake Republic has always been here as an island. It's a fairly large island. I can't remember the measurements off the top of my head. I probably should have brought these into these video, but it's fairly large. I'm not going to go into that right now. I will be doing kind of videos where one, where we fill out the sections of the map, and two, where we kind of explain sizes and forms of travel and all the kind of stuff that Story-wise may not be completely necessary, but lore and world building wise are, I feel, fairly important. So the Cake Republic's put together this map. They also have this landmass, it's not a landmass, they have this kind of inroad, fairly large inroad into the main landmass, which at the moment does not have a name. And then they also have this tiny one over here as well. This purple stuff, it's been made purple on purpose. It's not sea, it's not water. The landmass itself is just kind of floating in a, it's not open space, it's not free space. I don't want to go too much into it because one of the stories I'm doing will go into a lot of the details about how this exists and how it's all kind of held together on a string and, you know, on a hope and a prayer, basically, and how that's causing a lot of issues. But what that means is that, so if we go over to the Cake Republic, this is kind of an open, not void, but it's not water, so you can't swim across it. You can't walk across it. If you step off the Cake Republic into the purple mess, you will fall essentially forever, and you will fall outside of whatever this protective bubble is. Now, again, I say bubble, I'm using the word bubble. This is not a globe. This is purely flat. So everything you see is purely flat. Obviously, there's going to be mountains, etc., etc. But if it was completely flat and there were no real features on the map, you could stand here at the Cake Republic and you could see all the way over to the end. However, if I look this way and kind of go over here, all I will see is nothingness. It does not kind of circle round back on itself. There's only one way of travel, and the same here. So if I'm stood over here, I will not see the Cake Republic. It is all the way over here. And that's how it works. The only civilization, let's call all of the, well, I don't even want to call them civilizations. We'll go into that in a minute. These are kind of more, so to kind of go out. So if we look at, say, the free lands of Circle City here, or the Great Kingdom of the Glorious Crab and its beautiful lobster warrior queen, these are fairly big, but in and of themselves, think of them more as European unions or the United States or America, or these are large places that have individual, more like Europe. I think a lot of people see Europe as separate countries that come together as a union. All of these, the Freeland of Circle City, the Great Kingdom, the United Tribes of various places, these are all very much consisting of separate countries, but they all have a purpose, if you like, in the story. And there's a reason why they've all kind of banded together. And whereas part of the story is that obviously land masses are being brought in, but also so are just individual cities, sometimes individual houses. Sometimes a whole kingdom is dumped into an existing landmass. As the map stands at this stage, it is not true to say that where you landed, where you were kind of blipped in from one existence into the other, where you landed is not necessarily where you are now as a people or whatever. For various reasons, within the first 40 years, there has been a fairly large war. These are kind of the calmer times. There's still a lot of animosity between different places. You can't freely travel across the entire world. Well, you can, because obviously for story and especially gameplay reasons, you will have to be able to travel freely. But we have MacGuffins and story reasons to get around those, and kind of organizations that can. So if we switch back to the map, the shadow here is an example of something that wasn't there to begin with. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about the shadow, because I think I've called it something slightly different, but I did a starter on my Patreon. It was either called the shadow or the shade or the smoke. And this leads into the game, and this happens before this kind of 40-year cutoff, which is where this map exists. The game takes place before the 40 years and explains kind of where the shadow came from and why it exists. So I don't want to go into a huge amount of detail there, but the world can change. And again, the Forbidden Islands did not exist when kind of this big landmass came in. So this big landmass came into existence all in one go, but not necessarily with the peoples, kingdoms, countries that are highlighted now. The Cape Republic also was always there. The Forbidden Islands and the spaceship are new additions, but they're by that year 40. And things will play in to that as they do. So going forward, I've already started a kind of explanation of the Cape Republic. What is there? How they got this? It's not fully fleshed out yet. It'll probably be a video. I haven't added all the details, like cities, farmland, mountain ranges. There won't be any mountain ranges on this island. It's a fairly flat island, and it is mostly farms. But there will be two big settlements on there. Whatever, honestly can't remember what I called the capital of the Cape Republic off the top of my head. Cake City. It won't be anything that imaginative, right? But there will also be the home of the Master Baker, which is very much a plot point for the Cape Republic, and there will be some other small town settlements littered around as well. We'll add those as we go. Clearly, the Cape Republic can travel through this purple void. They do it essentially by using large cannons, and they fire themselves out in balls to wherever they can aim. This is why they have grabbed these kind of other sections on the main landmass. It's very much a one-way form of travel. So you fire the great big cannonball, whee, it lands here. If you want to send it back, you have to build a cannon and then send the cannonball back. To do that, they decided to grab some tracts of land. TCR over here is slightly different. This is their penal colony, and there's also some very varied factions of the Cape Republic who are forming over here. One thing to know about the Cape Republic is one country. It is unified. It is all of it itself. Same is true here. Little bit of fraying edges here. The free lands of Circle City are very much your stereotypical fantasy elements. So humans, elves, orcs, anything you would expect. Let's go back to the camera. Anything you would expect from kind of your generic fantasy, World of Warcraft inspired by Lord of the Rings, will exist in the free lands of Circle City. So that's kind of where your generic, I think, is a fair enough word, right? The kind of generic, and also the generic tropes of what fantasy adventure has kind of become since Lord of the Rings. Really, Lord of the Rings has had a huge sway over fantasy for a long, long time, and the free lands of Circle City will contain all of that to some degree. Obviously, Circle City is in there. Circle City is a city that has existed in almost everything I've ever written. It's gone through tremendous variations and has served many different purposes as my kind of major city of many different lands that I've created over time. Circle City in this one is, again, it's a hub. It's an extension, in theory, of King Arthur's Round Table, but it is a city that does the same thing. It is where everybody is welcome. So although you may have your various kingdoms around the free lands of Circle City will have a section of them dedicated to each of those. And the way it kind of works, I can't really draw it here because I don't have the ability to draw lines at the moment. I will need to add that into the capabilities if I'm going to do this. But if you imagine Circle City is roughly in the middle. It's not actually in the middle because of lands lost and lands gained over the years. It's more here towards the shadow. It's not quite on the border, but it's more kind of down here. I really hope I'm recording the mouse pointer when I'm doing all this. I bet I'm not, and I'm doing all this pointing and it's not coming through. But yeah, it's more kind of just off the border of the shadow. And then from there, if you imagine a series of... basically, imagine a Trivial Pursuit pie, right? Going out from the middle of Circle City, branching out to cover its lands. So the elves will be in one section of that pie, the dwarves will be in another, the humans will be in another, the orcs will be in another, and whatever other kind of more generic fantasy stuff I want to bring across will be in the free lands of Circle City. The United Tribes as various places serves as the same kind of idea, but this is more for your fairy tale type stuff. So this is more fantastic, more random. So to do a bad allegory, metaphor, simile, the free lands of Circle City is where Bob Hoskins lives. The United Tribes of various places is Toonland, where Roger Rabbit lives. All right, but again, they exist on the same plane. They do share some borders. And again, the United Tribes of various places will have various fairy tale inspired kingdoms in there. They may not all be kingdoms. I'm using kingdoms now just to denote a kind of separate country, separate entity, separate place. But it'll have many in there, and they will be inspired very much by fairy tale ideas, and they will very much have fairy tale names. Riverhold is interesting in that it's not really inspired by anything. I mean, it probably is. Someone can probably tell me actually what it is inspired by, what I've either absorbed via osmosis, growing up or whatever. Riverhold is, if you like, imagine kind of, I don't know, Aquaman's Kingdom, Atlantis, something like that. It's an underwater, very much underwater culture, but that's not water. All right. I don't know what the substance is yet. I know it's poisonous to most people, and I know it's not water. This down here is water. Also, I'll be changing the name of this place. I can't remember what this was inspired by. I think it might be Welsh, but I no longer remember how to pronounce it. So I'll probably be changing the name of this going forward. And I can't even remember what it means. I'm going to have to try and work that out. But yeah, this is what we would call in our universe fresh water. This is not. This would be probably more akin to something like sulfuric acid, something that is very, very dangerous for the majority of people, including the Cakes of the Cake Republic. But the fine folks of Riverhold, that's what they need to live, and there is a society there. Haven't quite decided how to separate that out from the kind of more fairy tale stereotypes and kind of generic fantasy stereotypes to kind of have them hold up on their own. The Cake Republic, going back to this, the Cake Republic is very much going to be a spin on steampunk, very English Victorian, very nope, can't say that word, very advanced tech, and steampunk mixed with cakes, mixed with a little bit of cyberpunk as well. They are the most tech advanced race. Can't say it. But yes, they are the most tech advanced race of the entire CakeyVerse as it exists in this moment in time. However, we do also have down here now the spaceship. The spaceship is very much a space version of Noah's Ark. It's a Battlestar Galactica. I haven't decided yet if it's going to be humans, aliens. It's probably going to be aliens. We're probably going to have enough humans from the free lands of Circle City, and then possibly from Earth, if I decide to bring those in at some point. There could be some Earthlings on the spaceship. But yes, the spaceship is very much a Battlestar Galactica Noah's Ark idea. Possibly if people who knew the universe was going to end, although the universe wasn't going to end, it was an accident. So even if this spaceship does exist as a kind of preventive measure for the end of the universe, and they thought it was going to happen, the fact that it did doesn't mean they knew it was going to happen. Who's on there at the moment, we don't know. They have yet to make contact, at least at this kind of 40-year stage, around this 40-year stage. They have yet to make contact with anybody on these land masses yet. The Cake Republic has fired a few cannonballs, one-way shots. Clearly nobody has returned, and they have not been able to build on the spaceship a kind of return ball to go back and feed information. But there has been an attempt by the Cake Republic to see what the spaceship is all about, but they do not know. The Forbidden Islands also fairly new. The Cake Republic, again, has done one-way missions into the Forbidden Islands, but no one has returned. So very little is known about what happens in the Forbidden Islands. And even why they're called the Forbidden Islands. I think that's probably just what the Cake Republic have called them. Don't know. Clearly there's a story there, right? Are you interested yet? So again, we're probably going to change the name of this. And honestly, with this region here, I haven't decided what this is. If you want to know the honest truth, I clearly had a reason at some point. I clearly gave it this name, which I can no longer pronounce, for a reason. That reason is now long gone. I'll go through my notes. I'll see if I can find it. I'll see if I can work out what the point of this was. But as it stands, I do not know. The great kingdom of the glorious crab and his beautiful lobster warrior queen. This is very much the aggressive. This is the aggressive faction. Very, very aggressive, martial, sea shell creatures. He is a giant crab. She is a giant lobster. They are surrounded by giant sea creatures. So, and again, in order to make the kind of story work and the gameplay work, so I'm approaching this from kind of, many different angles, trying to make sure it all works out. If we take a human, and again, this is an outside Cakey universe explanation. If you take a human, I put all of this somewhere, and I can't remember what the measurements were, but for average or medium, I think is what I called it, or normal, humans are normal size. All right, and then you will have small, which in kind of more fantasy things would be like a dwarf, and then you'd have large, which would be, approaching giant size, and then you might go smaller still. So like World of Warcraft, an example, you've got the gnome who are slightly smaller still, and then going bigger. I don't know, like, I guess with the dragons, the dragons are kind of human size when they're in their human forms, but then when they're dragons, they're slightly larger. And there will be this kind of 5 scale of size, which is kind of allowed for gameplay mechanics, but also will indicate the kind of sizes that you would expect these things to be. The crab is roughly human size, but in crab proportions. He is not a human version of a crab. He is a crab, but large. Same is true of the lobster. Mixed in with that are very much human-looking versions of fish. Not just shellfish, can be normal fish, mermaids, that kind of stuff. The general theme around this country, or this union, whatever this one is more of an empire. So think more Mongol Empire, ancient Mongol Empire, mixed in with a little bit of North Korea, to kind of get the idea of who the crab is. But then also very much Lovecraftian based in there. There's a lot of gods. There's a lot of tentacle creatures. There's a lot of kind of that darker shade of fantasy that sometimes gets mixed. Obviously, these things will mix, but yeah, that's very much meant to be not necessarily evil, because I'm trying very hard to not have all 3 lands of Circle City are the heroes and the great kingdom of the glorious crab and his beautiful lobster warrior queen. They're the enemy. Obviously, from a certain point of view, that will be true, but that's not what I'm trying to do and say these are bad, these are good. Obviously, if I tell a story about the brave heroes of the 3 lands of Circle City and they're going against the great kingdom of the glorious crab and this beautiful lobster warrior queen, then yes, there'll be good guys, there'll be bad guys. But on a kind of geopolitical standpoint, They just exist as, on a various scale of what the religious, political, all the kind of nonsense that exists in the real world will be thrown into the CakeyVerse as well. The Shadow we've kind of covered. The Shadow is a mysterious place. The Shadow is not easily walked into, as the atmosphere of the Shadow is poisonous to everybody else. I thought long and hard about making every area of the map have a different atmosphere, because to me that made a lot of sense, or a different gravity. But for gameplay mechanics, for storytelling mechanics, I kind of walked away from that, apart from a few certain situations. So obviously River Hold has got a different atmosphere, and if somebody from the United Tribes of various places, or a human from the Freelanders Circle City wants to go there, they will have to make precautions. They will have to wear protective suits, submarines, whatever, right? You can't just walk into River Hold. And the people from River Hold cannot just come out and exist in the atmosphere of everywhere else. The Shadow is very much the same. It is a place where, again, this is an out-of-universe explanation, so I'm happy to use humans as an example. We could not walk into the Shadow, we would surely die. Along the borders of the Shadow are various contraptions, be they magical, be they not, because again, depending on where you are, magic is either a thing that exists, a thing that does not exist at all, a thing that is revered, a thing that is hated, a thing that is feared. There are various feelings towards, the Cake Republic is very tech-based. They understand magic. They are themselves, the sentient cakes are themselves a product of magic. They do not like magic, and they do not like seeing magic used. The United Tribes of various places being kind of based on fairy tales. Magic is kind of a way of life, although they may not recognize it as magic. It's just the way the world works. The Freelands of Circle City being kind of your generic fantasy thing, they very much know what magic is. They use it, and there could be different forms of magic as we would know it, be it mana driven, be it druids, be it come from gods via religion, that kind of stuff. They all exist there. I'm not going to go into all of this now, because we have one more place we haven't hit yet, which is the Blessed Sands of the Paladins. The Paladins, so there are two organizations, if you like, within the CakeyVerse that allow their members, or have permissions, to kind of cross borders and do various things in various places to a certain degree. One of them is in the Freelands of Circle City, and is the Adventurers Guild, which is pretty much just a MacGuffin to allow quests. So as a gameplay thing, it would be a quest hub. It can send you to various places. It gives you permission to cross borders. There could be wars happening. There may not be wars happening, but the borders are well manned. There are border crossings. Of course, there will be ways to get around borders if you don't want to go through the Adventurers Guild. You want to go to various places if you're a smuggler, etc. These all set up story points going forward. But yeah, so you've got the Adventurers Guild, which is based in Circle City, and then you have and you got the Paladins. The Paladins have taken over just one section of the Blessed Sand of the Paladins, although it's taken that name. That whole area is not actually controlled by the Paladins as such. They have taken a temple. It is not a temple that belongs to them. It is a temple that belongs to a god. They have taken it. They now have the blessing of that god. And they also kind of have outposts, outreach to various places throughout the kingdom. And they are one of the very few who have the capability to go into the Shadow. The Cake Republic can also do it. The Paladins can also survive in the Shadow. One of the stories, if I get to the game, when we make the game, you are a Paladin and you're in the Shadow, and it explains how this came about. The rest of the sands area is largely considered to be empty. That's not technically true, but it's also not something we're going to go into right now. This has probably been way too long, way too boring. I doubt anyone is ever going to watch this. I'm going to stop now, but I just kind of wanted to do a general overview of the map, where we are, the fact that it's not water, it's not easy to travel off the landmass to the islands. It's not easy to travel from the spaceship to the land masses, and so far no one has come out of the spaceship. But yeah, this is where we are. And going forward, plans going forward are to really start to build up the map. However, the map will never be a full, complete representation of what exists in these lands. And there's kind of two reasons for that. One, I want room to grow, right? If I say this is what's in Circle City and there is nothing else there, then stories always have to happen at those various places, right? There's no room to grow. There's no wiggle room. And I want to leave myself a lot of wiggle room in all of these places. And some of them are going to be more mapped out than the others. So obviously this map comes from the Cape Republic. So they are going to know more what is in their areas than anywhere else. I'm not going on the idea, which at one point I was thinking of, that this was a misinformation map and that the Cape Republic would have, drawn themselves to be a lot more powerful, bigger than they actually are. We're not going to do that. The map isn't there to confuse or hide things from the viewer, from the reader, from whoever. But it is meant to grow as the story, etc. grows. And I don't just want it to grow, but, I need to tell a story. I don't have a place on the map to do it. That's fine. I'll zap in a new landmass and we will travel there for this story. That's not what I want to do. I want to keep this kind of what we have here. I want to keep this as the landmass going forward. We've got a lot of room to grow. Again, I don't know what I'm going to end up doing with this area. I might get rid of it entirely and maybe move the Freelanders, give the Freelander Circle City some more room, grow this over here. Maybe the spaceship comes and lands and, grabs a whole bunch of land for themselves. Because God knows what, we don't know what the state of the spaceship is. Can they survive? Do they need the land so they can start to grow crops? We don't know. And the whole point of the CakeyVerse is that we don't know. I don't know, and I'm the one who's creating it. A lot of this is going to hopefully be made up with input and participation as we go along. So, yes, there's the game. That'll be very highly scripted. And you will play the game. And because it's set before this kind of 40-year cutoff where I'm trying to do most things going forward, there's 40 years. The 0 to 40, I can have a lot of fun with and do whatever I want, right? 40 plus is where we're trying to grow it, or hopefully I'm trying to grow it in front of everybody's eyes, in front of everybody's eyes, and there will be a lot of participation, Twitch stories that may take place in various places, cities, countries even that may just, grow out of nowhere and have to exist on this map somewhere. So I need room to grow. And even though the Freelander Circle City say they have everything that's bordered, doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Alliances can change, friendships can fracture, rebellions can happen, small, outposts. The one thing that obviously we can't have is ships at the moment, unless we get more spaceships and the spaceships flying around. But there will be no boats. There will be no water-based vessels, unless they're very contained in the kind of natural rivers, the kind of natural water rivers kind of down here. We do have, this is water. This is a hole. It's not a lake. These are meant to be lakes. This is a sea, if you like. There may be secrets there. Who knows, right? And again, it's just who knows I'm trying to get across. So even though we will be filling in the map, we will be putting in the big points of interest. Obviously, Circle City will go there. The Great Kingdom is going to have a capital. We will know what that is. The United Tribes of various places will have various towns. The Blessed Sands of the Paladins has their temple. So we can put various things on, but it will not be a full map when we start. It will be a full map when we end, as it's going to grow with the stories. It's going to grow with hopefully what we do. I do want to do some tabletop D&D solo adventures through the CakeyVerse, and using the mythic system and some of that. You know, as you explore, you roll to see what's there. Once we know what's there, we can put it on the map. So, you know, there will be sections of the map that we will only explore. I wonder if that's what the big purple Welsh named region was for. I wonder if that's meant to be my kind of unknown. Maybe. But anyway, this is way too long. It's been like over 30 minutes. I think it's gone past an idea of a brief description of the map. It's a fairly long description of the map with no real input. But if you got this far, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're looking forward to more stuff coming soon. There will be more stories, more map work. And then as we go along, there will be more interactive stuff as we grow the lore, the world, the characters in time. And I hope people are looking forward to that. Anyway, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all when I see you all. Bye for now, everybody.